This video will show you how to replace the outer tie rod end on a Chrysler Town & Country. This is part of the front steering and suspension, located behind your front wheel. A quick note about doing this job, you will need an alignment once we're done. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Now the first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've done that, remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts so we can get the wheel off of here. Now that we have the wheel out of the way, we can have a look along this area. This is where we can see our tie rod ends and our power steering rack bellows boot. We'll start the removal process in the middle of the outer tie rod end and the inner tie rod end. You're going to find a 22mm jam nut. You can either use a wrench or you can use some long pliers, whatever works best for you. We're going to be turning this clockwise. Once you have movement from there, let's continue on towards the outer tie rod end. Now, as we can see, the outer tie rod end makes its way through our steering knuckle. Up along the top area here is an 18mm mounting nut. Let's go ahead and remove that. We'll give it a quick inspection and start it back on just a couple threads. There's that. We'll use some penetrant in this area. Now, if you do happen to have a tie rod end stud puller, you can use that. Most people don't. You can carefully use a hammer. If you were using a hammer, we want to lightly tap along the steering knuckle, causing vibration. This should drop down. That's what the nut is for, preventing it from falling and potentially hurting us. Now, at this point, we can remove that mounting nut. Quick inspection. We'll set that aside. Now at this point, we can start unscrewing the outer tie rod end counterclockwise. While doing so, count the amount of threads it takes to remove it. 1, 2, and so on. Your results may vary. Just take note. My count was 22. Your results may vary, as I mentioned. A quick inspection will set it aside. There it is, friend. The next thing we'll do is clean the threads on the inner tie rod end, confirming nothing's rotted, weak, or damaged. That looks good. Once you have that cleaned, we'll continue on with some anti-seize along the threaded portion of the inner tie rod end. Let's prepare to install our brand new outer tie rod end. Now when we go to install the outer tie rod end, we want to get it threaded on. Once we have it started on, continue on by installing it the same amount of turns it took to remove it. 1, 2, and so on. Now, as I mentioned before, we want to install this the same amount of turns as it took to remove it. Now that we have that, the same amount of turns as it took to remove it, let's just go ahead and bottom out that jam nut against the outer so it doesn't spin. We'll take the outer and bring it up into the steering knuckle. Let's take that and we'll get it in position into our steering knuckle. Now at this point, we'll continue on with our mounting nut. The torque for this will be 53 foot-pounds. At this point, we're going to install a locking cotter pin. We need to pay attention to the slots on the mounting nut in comparison to the port on the stud of the outer tie rod end. They need to be aligned. If it's not properly aligned, continue tightening the nut until the very next slot is. We'll make sure we peen that over so there's no way this nut can loosen up on us while we're driving down the road. Let's make our way back to the jam nut. To tighten the jam nut, we're turning it counterclockwise, bringing it towards the outer tie rod end. Now we'll just make sure everything's nice and straight. One last quick inspection in this area and we can prepare to reinstall our wheel. One last quick inspection while we're still in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. Now once you have your wheel in place, start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. Bottom them out in a crisscross manner. Get the wheel back on the ground and torque each of those lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. Now I have the wheel safely on the ground. Let's go ahead and torque those lug nuts to that 100 foot-pounds as I mentioned. Torqued. Okay, friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing you have to do is go ahead and take your vehicle for a road test, listen for any odd noises, and get yourself in alignment. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.